Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this month's edition of Family Service and Guidance Center's Real World Parenting Conversations. I'm Pam Evans. I head up the marketing and development for FSGC. As you may know, FSGC, we specialize in treating kids of all ages up to the age of 18 who may be struggling with things like anxiety, depression, ADHD, and other mental health challenges. In fact, we're the only community mental health center that specializes in providing hope and healing for kids. So we are super excited that you are able to take time out of your busy day. We're offering these monthly parenting workshops to the community because we know parenting, especially right now, and these past, 15, 18 months, Jenny, it's tough, and we want to help as much as we can. Again, we're glad to have you. A couple of quick housekeeping notes. I mentioned we are recording this session, and we will post it hopefully tomorrow, at the absolute latest on Monday, on the FSGC website. So if you know people, after you hear all of the great information that Jenny's going to share, they have access to it. Feel free to share that link. Also, if you need a certificate of participation or attendance for anything, if you could just drop your first and last name in the chat at some point this evening, we're happy to get that certificate emailed to you tomorrow or Monday as well. So I think that's all I have on the housekeeping things. I'm going to introduce Miss Jennie Watson. She is an LSCSW and our amazing Director of School and Community Services. For tonight's discussion, she's going to tell you a little bit about herself, give a brief overview, and then jump into questions. So Jenny, take it away.
Thank you, Pam. And I know you're going to be will you still get notified if others join us? Okay. Yep. I didn't know if I should be watching for that or not. Just do my thing, huh? All right. So, as Pam mentioned, I want to give a really just a brief overview, kind of who I am, what I do, and I do have the list of questions that was presented at the beginning. So, and Ronnie, as other people join in, they'll just kind of get added to the mix of things. And if there's other questions you think of or have, I'm here to answer them the best that I can. So as Pam said, I'm the Director of School and Community Services. Essentially what that means is I'm the primary point person for all the schools in Shawnee County to work with in various capacities. Some have everybody has different levels of need in different areas. And so I have some schools where we have minimal support and some where we have large teams of people working in there and everything in between. So I oversee those pieces. So gives me a lot of opportunity to be outside the office and do a lot of different things. I supervise clinicians, case managers, and the attendant care and group staff. So lots of opportunity to work with our youth in the school and community settings. So tonight's presentation is around this pending transition back to school. It kind of feels like summer just started for a lot of us, especially if you talk to the kids. They're telling me they're not quite ready yet, but ready or not, it's coming. And when we see that date on the calendar, sometimes it feels like it's really far away, but it creeps up on us every time. So tonight's presentation is really intended to be around what things can we do as parents, caregivers, and adults in the lives of children to help them have a better and more successful entry into school. This is something I talk about annually, well before COVID, but I think that, I was just having a conversation earlier today with our coordinator of our anxiety treatment program, and she and I were having a conversation around how different the entry into the school year this year is going to be, just with the way things have been. So we know that it's going to be different. Every single year is, but this one has some unique challenges and things that we're facing. So one of the first things I would encourage us to kind of think about is looking at opportunities to give control and choice to our young people in our lives when we can. What I mean by that is, when a person doesn't feel like they have control over their environment, when we are being told what to do, whether it be by parents, teachers, authority figures, whoever, sometimes when it just doesn't feel like we have any control, that's when we sometimes see behavior outbursts, kids shutting down, things just not going well. So giving some sense of control or choice over their own lives. So, you have to we have to get school supplies somehow, somewhere. If we can have kids pick out their own school supplies. I know it takes longer. It's more of a headache because they go with you to the store or sit next to you on Amazon and on the computer while looking at different things. And, it takes my 7-year-old a really long time to pick out a backpack, but it's one of the routine type task things we do of letting her pick out. I tell her what she's getting based on the list that the school gives me, and then she picks out the things that she wants. Having them start getting into, the routine of picking out their own clothes if they're old enough, picking out some of their classes if they're middle school, high school, and have some of that flexibility there. When there's opportunity, and we sometimes have to dig to find it, because sometimes we're just in a situation where there's not a lot of choice or control, but when there is, allowing ourselves and trying to wiggle out those extra few minutes, and sometimes it can be a lot of minutes, to allow that opportunity for choice and control. The other kind of big piece, I've done this a really long time, and the kids that I've seen have the most successful end of that transition period over time is when parents are able to find ways to connect with the school. So knowing who their teachers are, a little bit about what their class schedule is, who they play with at recess or sit next to at lunch, having the ability to email or drop a message through some school app or something to the school, and just kind of being actively involved in that way. It's still unknown to me right now. I was speaking to my person over at 501 yesterday, and there's a lot of discussion going on around whether or not who's allowed into the building. Last year parents couldn't come in the building because they were trying to minimize the number of people in that space. And so that's still kind of an unknown that's being decided and discussed right now. So physically going up there for things is maybe not an option, but there's other ways to kind of do that. And it does take more time. All of this stuff takes more time. And we have better connection and better teamwork when that's able to happen. Now, sometimes, communication is a two-way street. We could be trying to communicate and we may not be getting that same level of communication back to us for a variety of reasons. So I would just encourage, not giving up. All of those schools have teams of people who work there at either the administrative or like student support level. So finding out who the school counselor is, the school social worker, the school, some of them have vice principals, or there's another title that they sometimes use that I can't pull out of my memory right now, but connecting with those people to find out what's the best way for me to have ongoing communication with the people working with my student, with my kid. And, that way you're able to have that connection and that discussion when things are going well, in addition to if there's some struggles, and you guys can kind of work together and know what's going on. In my experience, it seems as if the schools also, they don't really like to call parents to share the not so great news sometimes if there's somebody having a rough day, but they're definitely more comfortable with it if they've got these established relationships and connections with the parents. And so when you have opportunity to do that, the more we can forge that, absolutely the better. So those were the two biggest things that I wanted to kind of touch on that weren't part of the questions. And I did get a list of questions that had been presented by a group of people prior to tonight. And I've kind of grouped them together in various categories. So I figured I'd take a minute to go through those. The first one is how to reestablish routines. And there was questions about sleep routines, homework routines, all the routines. There's so many, right? So it takes our brains at minimum about 21 days to establish a new routine. So I don't know how many days there are left between now and when your student goes back to school, but if there's less than 21, I would say start now. If there's more than 21, I would still say start now, because that's kind of the minimum number. And for that to become routine and kind of an automatic response, the sooner we can restart, the better. There were specific questions about bedtimes, appropriate bedtimes for kids' age. And I would say, you guys are the experts on your kids. So start with something. And if that seems to not work well, then, we make bedtime earlier, or we let it push back a little bit. And also trying to stay as true and attuned to those routines as we can, but also giving yourself grace in that sometimes there's a ball game, or sometimes there's a meeting, or sometimes there's a class that we're attending. And so dinner's going to be late, which pushes bedtime by 30 minutes. And that has to be okay, because that's going to happen every once in a while. But also pediatricians are kind of the experts on how much sleep kids need for their developmental age. Often they need more sleep than we think they do, because their brains, especially when they're back in school, they're constantly working on where do I sit, where do I stand, ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s. So whether they're physically exhausted or not, they are mentally and emotionally exhausted. So there's rarely too much sleep happening. It's getting kids to bed that's the harder part often. And then, because it also kind of affects our schedules in a lot of ways. I would also start thinking about your morning routine. I mentioned earlier giving kids the ability to control and have some choice when possible. Parents setting the expectation of tomorrow's going to be a warm day. You can pick out a short sleeve shirt and a pair of shorts that you can wear. Doing that the night before, so morning goes a little easier. Kind of thinking about packing the backpack, doing all the things you can do the night before to make that morning routine go a little bit easier. I would also work with your household on developing a routine or structure around homework space or school space, whether that's a schedule as far as who goes first, because sometimes we have limited table space or limited desk space, but trying to establish a dedicated, this is where we go to do our work, will help kids typically flip the switch from I've been watching TV or playing video games or playing with my games and playing with my toys or being outside to this is where I do this. Young brains are very concrete in that way, and just having that dedicated space tends to help the majority of kids. So really focusing on those bedtime routines, morning routines, and homework routines, so that you're not feeling like you're constantly nagging on your kids. Not saying that anyone does that, but I know I've been guilty of it. Did you do this? And she's like, I did. That's what I'm supposed to do at this time. I'm like, super great, that worked. So sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but it never does if we don't try. The other topic that kind of came up in a question, and I was so glad it did, because again, I was speaking with my colleague this afternoon, who is the supervisor of the anxiety treatment program. She was talking about what we may be looking at or expecting sort of in what's to come with our kids going back to school. anxiety is driven by fear, and there's been a lot of fear in the world in the last 16 to 18 months. And the reality is there still is some there. And the littles pick up these things around them, despite, the best efforts of the adults as well. So she gave me some things to share tonight that I was very appreciative for. She said if she had 2 things to really encourage people to think about, it's to provide ways to accommodate kids feeling distress or stress around returning to school without avoidance. Avoiding, while it might help in the short term, because we just take the bad thing away, the stressor away, that avoidance is actually so harmful in the long run. And so that avoidance just really makes things so much worse. The other thing that she had mentioned was just really focusing on being able to support the child, support our kids through what makes them uncomfortable, supporting them through that distress and validating that distress and helping them find that strength to get through it versus that avoidance thing. And she and I were talking about how hard that is, because it's difficult. It's hard to see if somebody's sitting there struggling, regardless of age, with something that's hard for them when we know we could just do something to fix it. But in fixing it, what we do is we kind of send this unwritten message or this unwritten signal of, you're not strong enough to do this on your own, so I'm going to do it for you. I'll take care of it. But what we want, we're going to see that longer term, more beneficial support through that accommodation without avoidance. How can we help? Let me sit with you in this. You're not alone, but like I said, not taking it away. Another question that had been posed from the group was around transitions. Transitions are hard for a lot of us, depending on a person's developmental age and functioning and kind of what's going on. Sometimes people struggle with transitions because they're leaving a preferred activity to a non-preferred activity. Sometimes it's just that lack of not knowing what's coming next. There can be a lot of reasons why people have a tough time with transitions. So one of the things that several tips or ideas for that is really thinking about giving either visual or written schedules as much as we can, depending on what we know is a constant or a consistent expectation of the day. Giving heads up warnings of, hey, we're going to need to leave in about 10 minutes, or here in about 10 minutes, things are going to change. And we're going to do something else, giving reassurance that we can come back to especially if we're leaving a preferred activity to go into a non-preferred activity, is this isn't the only time we're going to do this. I'm so glad to see you guys had such a fun time with it, or that it went over so well, but we'll put it away for now and come back to it at a different time. Because that's sometimes that irrational fear that kids have, is if this fun thing goes away right now, I'll never get it back. And we just give that reassurance that we can come back to this. It's just, this is the time for this is done, and we're moving to this now instead. So giving the warnings, giving the heads up. The other thing I would encourage is trying to, explore your school's websites, see if there's a way to connect with them early. If you have someone who's transitioning to a new school, trying to see if you're allowed to maybe go up there, tour the building, walk around, see where those classes are going to be, especially for our middle school and high school kids. That's one of those biggest fears is, can I get my stuff open? Can I, open my locker? Can I find my locker? Can I find my classes? Am I going to look lost? So being able to help with those transitions by practicing now, if they'll let you in, or seeing if on the website or somewhere you can get some sort of like a map or a layout of where things are going to be and kind of creating that for them. All of those things have helped, a lot of students over the years. Okay. And then there was a lot of questions about, how do I get my student or my kid to focus on, fill in the blank? lots of different topics. So, I just kind of clumped those together in, building in time, even though time is never our friend, we're always on the run, building in time for those teachable moments, looking for opportunity to just incorporate what's important or what we're trying to teach, what we're looking to do, in our everyday activities. Kids in the car, that's a great opportunity to talk about their day, and you can say how was your day, and your answer is going to be a solid fine, probably 90% of the time. But I changed that question to, what was the best thing about your day? What was the best thing, the thing you had the most fun with, the thing you enjoyed the most? And then, what was the worst part of your day? And then, but I always like to start with, what was the best? What was the best thing you did today? I sometimes throw, kids for a loop, and I'll say, what were you most proud of today? And when you ask those kinds of questions that aren't just a single one-word answer, you might still get a single one-word answer. And, you just give more opportunities to enhance those conversations and really kind of learn more. And then they start to sometimes, this is with some of the kids I've worked with at the schools. They'll come find me and be like, hey, I did something I'm proud of today, and I want you to know before you have a chance to ask me. And, that's always really fun, because then that's what they focus on. That's where that focus is. And then if you're thinking about your student, and if they're having, or your kiddo, and they're having a particular struggle in an area, there are so many organic ways to build that into just our daily life if we capture those moments and we look for them. So if it's a behavior thing that we're working on, if it's a worry thing we're working on, sometimes sharing some of that through remember that day you were proud of, and you kind of pull that up and you think about, I was thinking about that, and when you told me about that, it really resonated. It really reminded me of how, scared you once were to do stuff like that. And man, I'm just so proud of you, for doing that. So, that piece about building in time for teachable moments, it doesn't have to be this big, like huge thing that has a bunch of steps and is really complicated and detailed. It can be something as simple as, what were you most proud of today? What made you the most happy today? What are you looking forward to this week? Because those are the things that keep our brains and our thoughts focused on those good things versus sitting and spinning in all the negative muck and yuck that does exist out there in the world. And, our kids are going to get hit with both of them. They're going to get hit with the good stuff, and they're going to get hit with the bad stuff. And the bad stuff is always just more noticeable. That's where our attention goes. I mean, I like to kind of give the example of, how many times do we think, customer service agents get phone calls of, hey, I just wanted to call and say things went really well in my experience with your company. That doesn't happen. Those people exist for the purpose of complaints and things not going well. We as a society, we as people are more quick to focus on what's not going well because it makes us uncomfortable. It makes us not feel good, and we want it to change. So we focus on that. But what I'm asking is that we flip that over and we focus on what is going well, what is going right, and try to teach our kids to do the same. So my goal was to get through my content and the questions in approximately 30 minutes. And so it looks like I have hit that to allow time for additional questions or conversations. And it doesn't look like we had any others join us while we were talking. So not to put you on the spot, Ronnie, but did you have any other follow-up questions, thoughts, concerns, or things you wanted to review or talk about?
Can y'all hear me? Because it's lagging pretty bad on my video is.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, the video doesn't keep up as much, but we could hear you just fine.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we're new in Kansas, and so just, you know, my kids are sort of nervous about starting a new school. They've had to move a few times over the last few years. So I was just trying to get some insights about what I can do to make it easier for them.
Sure.
So,
Well, welcome, first of all. And, you know, I joke around with people. They think they think I'm kidding, but I really am being completely honest when I say, as a kid growing up, I didn't go to the same school 2 years in a row until my sophomore, junior, and senior year of high school. So, you know, all of those years, you know, starting as a new student, like I can certainly, it's scary sometimes, you know, and those questions of where do I go and who do I talk to and who do I sit with, and then add all the new struggles of kids in 2021. Yeah, that's tough. They've opened up enrollment, you know, in some of the districts. Have you had a chance to get them enrolled yet?
well, I got them registered into Topeka school system through the Tyler system. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
But I just barely found out today what elementary school my daughters, I got twins that will be going into 5th grade. And I just found out today that they'll be going to, what is it? What school are you going to, Bubba? Highland Park Central. And
Okay.
my son will be going to 10th grade to Highland Park. So I don't know what I need to do from there. To be honest, I called the lady, and I wasn't aware that there's a fee that you have to pay. I have to pay $300 to get my kids enrolled in school, and I've never had to pay for public schooling in my life, and so that was something new for me.
Yeah. And unfortunately, you know, I'm not from, you know, I don't know how the fees and all of that stuff work. I would imagine that they have different programs and things available, but I'm not super familiar with the process of how to go about that. And they're all of the principals and the like the mental health folks that I work with, they all came back Wednesday, so yesterday, I guess. But I haven't seen yet the roster of who's covering those schools. Have you had an opportunity to go to their website? And you said you enrolled them through Tyler, so you were able to access that, which can sometimes be tricky. Have you had the opportunity to go visit the individual schools' websites to see who their principals and
No, ma'am. No.
Highland Park Central, you know, obviously the elementary school, it's not a huge school by comparison to some of the other elementaries. So, you know, and I don't know what your kids are used to as far as school size and such. I mean, there's obviously lots of kids that go there, but as far as the building itself, but they were doing some remodeling last year. I'm curious to see what it looks like now. You know, I would, when you have time, you know, go on to those websites and see what, who those people are, call up there and see if you can take your kids and just let them look around.
So does that
They might
Tyler
say-
system automatically enroll them into the school that they need to be enrolled in, or do I need to do a separate enrollment and like go up to the schools?
The way I understand it to work is that putting them in through Tyler should put them in the school they're supposed to be in.
Okay.
So, and Highland Park Central does feed into usually either Eisenhower or Robinson Middle School, and then those do feed into Highland Park High School. So, I mean, those are together.
Yes, ma'am.
So, you know, that makes sense. You know, versus one that's on one side of town and one that's way over here or something like that. So, They often sometimes have, gosh, I wish I had my resources here with me. I'm doing this not from my desk at the office. Renee or Ronnie, I'm sorry. Ronnie, do we have, if you want to leave me or give me your email or contact information, they usually have a day, and I feel like I've seen it, but I can't access it right now, where they have like a resource day, and they have a bunch of tables and things set up from the 501 school district, and they have school supplies, but they have people to answer these kinds of questions all together in the same space. There it is. So let me write that down real quick.
I've got it too, Jenny. So
You got it? Okay,
Yeah.
then I won't worry about it.
yeah.
So let me see if I can find out. They didn't do it last year because of COVID stuff. The year before, though, I had a table there, and they did it at the Burnett Center. And like I said, there were just lots of tables all set up with all the different people to answer these kinds of questions for you,
Okay.
and give you resources and information about our community.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
And there's also, that's one of the nice things about Topeka. I mean, I moved around a lot as a kid, and I, of course, didn't know any of this kind of stuff, but I came to family service, straight out of undergrad as a, young, fresh out of college, not really knowing for sure what I wanted to do with my life type person. And I've stayed for 16-ish years, because the agency works hard in the community to serve, families and kids. And Topeka is rich in resources, really. Especially compared to other parts of the state and things like that, with the different things that are available. There's never enough resources to meet the needs out there, but we do have options. So when I get back to I will be out teaching the next couple of days, actually, but early next week. I can look before then. I can try to get you some of that information, because
That
a
would
lot
be
of
great.
questions could be answered by
Mhm.
those people, but I just want to make sure I'm connecting you with the right people.
Okay, that sounds great.
Yeah. And you said 11th grade? for your high
I've
school?
got a 10th grader and twins that will be going into 5th grade.
Okay. Because at HP, they do have an academy for the 9th graders to try to kind of help them acclimate from the middle school to the high school. But I don't know what they have in place for new students. But they have a really great support team at HP. And they've got a lot of really cool student activities and things for kids to be involved in. So, it's really, they've got a lot going on. Lots of opportunity to get involved in things once you get in those doors. So,
Okay.
all right. Anything else besides getting you some more information, Ronnie, that I can help with?
Not that I can think of right now. Thank you, ladies.
Okay. Of course.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us tonight, and welcome to Topeka.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, very good. Well, Jenny, thank you so much for sharing these really great tips with everyone. And I hope you have a great rest of the evening and week.
Thank you, ma'am.
Take
You
care.
ladies as well.
All
Thank
right.
y'all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.